Hypotheses testing is how we make careful claims from data without pretending we know everything. It brings data-informed clarity to business decisions through a valid research model. In this video, we will connect null and alternative hypotheses to research choices and business meaning. We will also cover why sampling choices and model design shape what your conclusions can honestly support. In the scientific method, hypothesis refers to a prediction about an outcome or event. Testing is the discipline that keeps us from relying on hunches alone. The point is reliability. We want conclusions that hold under natural or controlled conditions. In business terms, this is about reducing decision risk with evidence you can explain. A hypothesis allows us to formalize what we believe could happen under certain conditions, and then aim to prove or disprove our belief using data. When conclusions are derived from data, hunches and gut feelings can be quantified, measured, and acted upon with lesser risk. Hypothesis testing is always about pitching two contradictory statements about the same situation against each other. The null hypothesis is the status quo position, which denies predictability or relationships between two or more variables. The alternative hypothesis is the direct contradiction, stating that some relationship or effect exists between or among those variables. People often use hypothesis testing in the singular to refer to testing the alternative hypothesis. However, that is only half the story. The logic of the test depends on evaluating the pair as a unit. The alternative hypothesis can only succeed or fail in the baseline context provided by the null. If you are hypothesizing that increasing prices will increase revenues in a high-demand market, the null hypothesis is that increasing prices will not affect revenues at all. The outcome of the hypotheses testing is always framed in the context of the null hypothesis. You either reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis in favor of the alternate. A key problem that occurs in some academia, in research, and especially quite often in business, is that there is a tendency to presume that if something shows up as statistically significant, it must be true. Or if there is a failure to reject the null hypothesis, then it must be accepted. This is a fallacy and can be misguiding. Language nuances are critical when making business decisions, and we will explore this fallacy next. In testing and in science, words matter. Acceptance suggests the question is settled and no longer worth retesting. Scientific inquiry, by definition, remains open as new information arrives. If you need an alternate phrase, retain can be used instead of fail to reject. In the example we discussed above, if we are unable to prove that revenues increase as a result of price increases, it would be false to assume that prices won't affect revenues at all. Timing, elasticity of demand, market share, are all unconsidered factors and need to be tested. In business decisions, language nuances matter. What gets retained, either the null or the alternative, should never be automatically accepted as ground truth. Using the term research when you actually mean search is another major fallacy that derails decision-making in businesses. Looking things up online is a search, not research. While searches can quickly validate or inform you about what you need to know, they don't provide a foolproof, defensible basis for making decisions. Even when referring to other people's research papers, it is critical to remember that your assumptions and variables might be quite different. Remember that research starts with defined null and alternative hypotheses first. Thereafter, data or information is obtained using an instrument, such as an experiment setup, a survey, observation, or existing data from sources. After collection, you analyze, test the hypotheses, and interpret results. This then forms a conclusion about which hypothesis is more likely at a stated confidence level. This is what makes your final recommendation defensible and reliable. A strong study clearly separates dependent variables from independent variables. Controls matter because they reduce alternative explanations for what you observe. In pure sciences, controls can be set with precision through hands-on experiments. In business and social science, one must often rely on quasi-experimental designs where key control variables are not fully under your control, so interpretation must be more careful. However, observations collected over time or geographies can be more readily filtered in these designs, as long as statistical interpretation controls act as guardrails against conclusion uncertainties. Most of the time, we cannot observe every member of the population we care about, so we collect a sample and learn from it. This is where decision risk enters. because different sampling approaches can produce different pictures of the same population. Population parameters represent the characteristics of the entire group, but sample statistics can only point towards the population, not guarantee the outcome. For instance, if you sample a grape, you can presume that all the grapes in that location taste the same. However, you cannot guarantee that all the grapes will be just as sweet. Similarly, and more importantly, a sample grape can't predict what apples would taste like. A representative sample can help you control for differences that you cannot directly manage. The broader point is decision relevance. Your sample is the bridge between what you observed and what you claim about the larger group. Data can come from experiments, surveys, prior studies, literature reviews, participant observation, or existing sources, as long as the link to the hypotheses is clear. Use hypotheses testing to turn questions into clear, testable statements that can support real decisions. Keep your collection language targeted, research or search based on what your goal is for a decision. Keep your conclusion language disciplined, reject or fail to reject, without implying permanent certainty. Treat research design and sampling as strategy choices because they control what your data can legitimately speak for. When you align hypotheses, instruments, and interpretation, your final business conclusion becomes both useful and responsible.